Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's August 8th, 2017, and it's Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time for Two Nerds in a Pod, episode number 39, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy. I'm Lam, also known as Mr. Nice Guy, and I got my comrade in gaming commentary here with me, the miggity, Mac, also known as Maction. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you for being here live. Mac, how are things, man? How you been?
Things are going well. I've been great. Had a fantastic week. I mean, now granted, I felt like I had a little less nerds in a pod, two nerds in a pod.
It's true, and that's my fault, people. Mac is passive-aggressively taking a shot at me for going on vacation. 2 weeks ago we did our co-op episode where I was in Utah. We hung out at Mac's place, did the show in the same room for the first time in over a year, and then the next week I was in Seattle with my family. So was unable to do the show, but we're back, Mac.
It's true. We are back, and this is happening. And I mean, I honestly, it was just a great week, relaxing.
Good.
My folks moved to Hawaii.
Wow.
So I spent a lot of the week helping them get like their stuff in order so that they could move, including things like I don't know, take possession of valuables. Yes, I think I am now
It's
worth
a tough job.
I mean my net worth is like 50 times more now that I've got somebody else's valuables.
We'll have to chat off stream about.
Oh yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that still 50 cents is 50 times more than 1 cent. So
give yourself some credit, man.
But no, it's just been an exciting week. Lots of change, lots of good things, and lots of fun things, really. So that's pretty much been mine. And Mr. Nice Guy, I mean, I can only imagine how much fun it must have been to hang out with the family.
Dude, everything was awesome, just like in the Lego movie. Have you seen the Lego movie? Everything is awesome. That's how my week was, dude. It was great. It was fantastic. Went to Seattle. We drove from Utah to Seattle, 16 hours. Did it in one shot. No stopping for sleep. We took turns sleeping, my wife and I, and driving. And then
how'd the nice kids do with that kind of thing?
They did well. They watched movies the whole way, and I would say near the end of the trip they were screaming and stuff. But it was okay. I mean, they did real well for kids, so it worked out. We got there. We hung out with my parents. Had a barbecue with the extended family and my family. My parents actually let me use their Traeger, and I'm big into barbecuing and smoking. A Traeger's a smoker.
Oh, okay.
So I did some ribs on there, and that was fantastic. They have me really, really wanting to get a smoker now, a dedicated smoker. We went to all kinds of parks. We went to a free arcade, since this is a gaming podcast. There's this free arcade in Seattle called Vidiot, and I want to give them a shout-out because they have a very, very cool establishment, Mac. They have basically a bunch of multicade machines, and everything is free to play. They have some traditional games as well, like Star Wars Racing, Dance Dance Revolution, NFL Blitz. I know that's one of your favorites. And then, it's a bar. I don't drink alcohol, but they had plenty of good non-alcoholic stuff. They had virtual reality. They had pinball. They had an old Atari. They had like everything. They even had consoles, Mac. They had a N64 with Mario Kart, and actually the crazy thing is they had not only the consoles, but they had a bunch of games in there. And Seattle is just such an awesome place that they trust people not to steal them. You know what I mean? They're like, hey, we'll just leave these here. If you want to switch the game in the console, put it in there. They had comic books, Maction. I'm not exaggerating, man. This was like the ultimate nerd cave. So, I mean, it was a blast. We had so much fun. You're going to get bored of hearing about my vacation. We went mini golfing at this place called the Flat Stick Pub. It's also a little pub has non-alcoholic drinks as well. Jones Soda, shout out to them. Love the local favorite, Jones Soda. 9-hole golf course in this pub, man, of mini golfing. Very creative holes. My wife and I had a lot of fun to do that. It's like $6 per person. Anyone who's in the Kirkland area, go check out the Flat Stick Pub. Shout out to them. We ate a lot of good food, Mac. I could talk about it all day, but we don't have all day. Those were some of the highlights of the vacation. Kids had fun too. Went to parks with the kids. It was a blast, dude. It was fantastic.
Man, that sounds fantastic, Mr. Nice Guy. Thanks for sharing, and I assure you I will not get bored of it. Mr. Nice Guy, before we hop into the news, I was wondering if I may make a special request. I have a little bit of something. I don't want to call it news, but perhaps I could call it something like a little announcement so I don't take away from the news.
Dude, do your thing, man.
Okay, so I've got a little something interesting that I found out about earlier today. Many of you may know that At Games is going to be producing an HDMI-based Sega Genesis that will play cartridges, right? We've all heard of this?
Yeah, we are.
Of course, it's going to have wireless controllers that come with it, standard, as well as with some controller ports on the front to play. Now, two big problems that I have either heard about or heard rumblings of with regard to this At Games production of a Sega Genesis. The first one is that people have complained about latency on the controllers, which is basically a death sentence.
Maybe real quick explain what latency is, just for those who may not know, if you don't mind.
Of course. So latency is going to be some delay between you inputting your control, you hitting the button, and the character reacting.
Yeah, lag in layman's terms.
Exactly, lag. Now, some of that could possibly be attributed to people's televisions, because not all televisions are ready to rock and roll for video gaming, for precise video gaming. So sometimes you need to enable your television's game mode, or your low latency or low lag mode on your television in order to make sure that your gaming console is operating properly, whether for current gen or way, way, way old past gen consoles. So anyway, but that's one thing. The other thing, and this is the big deal breaker for me, I was excited about getting this At Games Genesis console until I heard from people testing it that it would not work with an EverDrive. And I have, of course, an EverDrive for my Sega, and so I really wanted something to do that. But, and here's where the good news / announcement comes in. There happens to be this console that's being sold on AliExpress, right?
Okay.
It is essentially completely identical. However, there are two slight differences. In the very limited reviews that I've seen about this particular console, it runs about the same price. But there hasn't been reported any lag or issues like that, like with the early review copies of the At Games Sega Genesis console. But more importantly, this one has been tested and works with an EverDrive.
Now, once you're done, I got to ask you a question. You're done. So here's my question. Because you already have a Sega Genesis, and you already have an EverDrive, so you can effectively play any Sega Genesis game that you'd like to.
Yes.
What is the benefit of you getting another one, and
just having HD out? This one is going to have this one will plug in HDMI into the television. Now, I'm a little bit like I said, I probably would have gone, because the price point is low enough. It's right around that $50 mark. Basically, we're getting into impulse buy territory.
Sure.
So with this one, if it'll play in EverDrive, I think I'll probably get my hands on one. It'll take it a few weeks to get to me, but nonetheless, there we go. And I just figured I'd throw that out there as a bit of a public service, if in the off chance that anybody else had been a little off-put by the notion of the At Games Sega HDMI console not being able to play a Mega EverDrive, or EverDrive. An EverDrive, which for me at least is something that something that is a big deal to me, because once you've started on the EverDrive route, you cannot go back.
Once you've EverDrived, you never DeverDrive.
Yeah, we can work with that one. Yes.
On that note, Mac, I say we hop right into the news, my friend. What do you think?
Absolutely, Mr. Nice Guy. Take us away.
Let's do it. Once again, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, this is Two Nerds in a Pod, nerdiest gaming podcast in the galaxy, episode number 39. We got a lot of really cool gaming news this week. Let's start it off talking about something that's a little bit unique, something we wouldn't typically talk about on our show. And I'll be honest, man, I don't know what is up with my internet. We've been having issues with it. In fact, we almost weren't able to do the show today just because of internet issues. So I have all these news stories loaded up on my phone, and now they're like reloading as I'm pulling them up. But here's the first one. So this one is on GameSpot. It says, PlayStation 4 players in North America who are planning to pick up a physical copy of Level 5's next major RPG, Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom, will have a few different options to choose from. Alongside the standard release, Bandai Namco announced today that the game will be available in limited quantity premium and collector's editions. Regardless of which package you choose, you'll get a bonus item along with the title. The standard Day 1 edition comes with a copy of the game and a special Sword DLC set, which includes 5 rare weapons. Meanwhile, the premium edition, which retails for $80, includes the aforementioned DLC pack as well as a 3D papercraft kit, an exclusive DLC sword called Dragon's Tooth, and a soundtrack CD, all of which is housed in a special steelbook case. Now here's where it gets crazy, Mac. The most extravagant option, however, is the collector's edition. This package retails for $200 and includes all of the contents from the premium edition, along with a Ni no Kuni 2 art book, a chibi mechanical diorama, a lofty plush, a making of documentary Blu-ray, a 3D papercraft display case, and the game's newly announced season pass. You can see a shot of each edition in this article. So, Mac, just generally speaking, man, I guess I got 2 questions for you. First question is, have you ever bought a collector's edition of a game? Second, what are your thoughts on collector's editions in general? I have opinions, but I want to hear yours, man.
Okay.
And to put things in perspective, guys, games usually cost $60.
Yeah. Games usually do cost $60. I don't know as I've ever bought a collector's edition. I think the closest I've ever come has been buying like the mid-level edition as a Kickstarter reward. So I've never bought a collector's edition super special awesome turbo mode. So I don't know. $200 is just a little bit outside of my do I really want this that much,
right,
type level.
Right. And to me, the type of people who are often the ones that would buy a collector's editions are the ones who would never open it in the first place, right? Like they're collectors. Like they want everything to be in mint condition. They want it factory sealed. So I kind of have always been confused about people who buy these why companies rather make these packages, put all these goodies in them, and then sell them for such a high price, only for them to either remain unopened or just sit on the store shelves. Now, I can say there's only been one time I've ever bought a collector's edition of a game. Actually, there's been a couple. One was when I bought a copy of BioShock 2 for Xbox 360, the collector's edition, and the only reason I bought that is because it was like $10 at some store. It was on clearance, so it came with all kinds of cool stuff. And I ended up actually selling it back to Amazon for more than $10 later because I didn't really like the game and I didn't really like the goodies enough to put them on my shelf. The other time I bought a collector's edition was NBA 2K, and it came with like a Michael Jordan poster, but it also came with a bunch of the virtual currency that you can use in the game. So I felt like I was getting my money's worth. It wasn't like I was just buying it for physical goodies. I was actually getting the virtual currency that you have to either earn or purchase in the game. So those have been the 2 times. Generally speaking, I think collector's editions are a waste of money, but I'd love to hear another argument from someone in the chat if anyone has one. And we have one person, Kane, who says, I have the BioShock 2 that came with the record. Yeah, it did, man. And I didn't have a record player, so I remember thinking, this is a cool record, but I have no way of listening to this. I could hang it on the wall, but I don't really see the point. So, my opinion. Anyway, next news story comes from Game Rant. It says, when Game Freak took time during Nintendo's E3 2017 press conference to reveal that a Pokemon RPG is in development for Switch, fans of the role-playing franchise were ecstatic, as it meant that the long-standing demand for a core entry in the franchise to be playable on a console was finally being addressed. However, while fans' excitement for the forthcoming release is understandable to say the least, Game Freak's series director/producer/composer Junichi Musada and director Shigeru Omori hope players' expectations aren't too high. It says Masadi and Omori revealed as much during a recent video interview with Game Informer, with Masada mentioning that while he totally gets why fans are anxious for Pokemon Switch title, for the Pokemon Switch title. He also hopes fans are able to temper their excitement. In a follow-up response to his statement saying Game Freak will do its best to create a great game to meet certain expectations, Masada said, "Of course, it is very difficult to make the game, so I hope people don't get their expectations too high." So, I'm just gonna say, what are your thoughts on that? I'm just gonna ask you what you think about that statement, Mac.
I don't think I really have any particular opinion on it, Mr. Nice Guy.
I have a strong one, but I didn't want to ask a leading question.
Yeah, no, I know nothing about the background of the company, of the games, of anything like that. So, I mean, if it's ironic, or if like knowing the history of that particular company, developer, what have you, if that makes it ironic, I'm just not sure.
No, that's cool. So my only thing is, and welcome all the people that are coming in the chat saying hello. Welcome to the show. My thoughts on this particular thing, Mac, is, I mean, if you're trying to sell a game, right? You're trying to sell a game, especially for a console that doesn't have a whole lot of software. Don't tell people not to get excited about it. Like, that's just me.
Okay.
He's saying temper your expectations. You guys, I know it's Pokemon. I know you're excited, but we don't want you to get too excited because, hey, games are hard to make. And I mean, he's basically saying we might make a game that's not that good, or that doesn't meet your expectations. So to me, that's frustrating for a game, especially for a game that is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch.
Okay, now let me just make myself sound a little bit less like an idiot here, okay? I was fully expecting that like this guy had been part of a group that published some game like oh gosh, what was the one that was it Evolve? Was that the one that had lots of hype? Yeah, and then went free to play because it just couldn't, maintain itself. Like it had lots of hype, and then, well, I mean, Destiny also had lots of hype and didn't really quite live up to it. So, I mean, I was thinking that it was something about this guy particularly.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, no, I totally get what you're saying, Mr. Nice Guy. That's not the way you want to. That's not the best foot to start a video game. A video game. Media
promoting a
or
game,
push.
Right?
Yeah, promotion. Thank you, Mr. Nice Guy. See, Mr. Nice Guy has the words when I don't. But that's a terrible way to start the promotion. Does not give me much confidence. But then again, I haven't been Pokemoning since Pokemon Gold and Silver.
But you have been doing it retro.
Oh yeah. The old. I play a little bit of Red and Blue now and then.
Yeah, you got to bust out the red and blue. Very cool. Well, hey, guys, next news story comes from GameSpot. It says, Valve today announced Artifact, a Dota card game based on a hugely popular MOBA. A teaser trailer was released, but it doesn't show much at all. It does, however, confirm that the digital card game will launch sometime in 2018. The announcement came today during Valve's International Dota 2 tournament. Teams are competing for a share of more than $20 million, making it one of the biggest gaming tournaments in history. And so that's it, guys. It's a very short story. Also, I saw an article that there will be a Fallout board game that's being made. I'm a fan.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Nice Guy, it occurs to me that for the past 2 years, if not more, whether as Two Nerds in a Pod or in the previous iteration of this show, that we've been asking ourselves at periods, periodically, is esports going big time? Will it someday be as accepted as normal sports and so on? And I think we've kind of stopped asking that question because of stories like this, haven't we?
What do you mean? I'm a little confused.
Well, I mean, it's that every week there's some news about an esports competition and about the insanely huge prizes, or someone was recently censured for revealing how much money he makes as an esports player. I hope I didn't steal that as a news story from you.
No, but you actually did segue perfectly into the next news story.
Did I? Oh,
yeah. And just in case you guys are watching for the first time, we don't really collaborate, Mac and I, before the show. So I guess we're just on the same wavelength because this next news story is also on GameSpot, and it says the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris. This is a big deal, guys. The 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris could feature video game competitions. The co-president of the Paris Olympic Bid Committee told the Associated Press that discussions will be held with people from competitive gaming circles and the International Olympic Committee to discuss the prospect of having gamers compete for Olympic gold. Tony Estengue, the co-president of France's bid committee, told the AP, the Associated Press, that the gaming community deserves to at least be part of the discussion. Quote, "We have to look at it because we can't say it's not us, it's not about Olympics," Estengue said. The youth, yes, they're interested in esport and this kind of thing. Let's look at it. Let's meet them. Let's see if we can find some bridges. He said, let's try to if we can find some bridges. Quote, "I don't want to say no from the beginning," he added. "I think it's interesting to interact with the IOC, with them, the esports family, to better understand what the process is and why it's such a success." So, guys, I mean, we've officially, like Mac was alluding to, we've reached the point where esports are no longer, just, oh, you're in your basement playing games in your mom's house. That's not what video games are anymore. They're a legitimate business making money. There's figures with brands who are promoting themselves. There's gaming houses. It's the real deal, Colin Cowherd. I hate to break it to you, but it is. Mac, you have anything else you want to add on that, or should I just drop the mic on that issue?
Oh, the mic was already dropped.
The mic's been dropped, y'all. Moving on. Let's all right, 2 more news stories. Let's do one of them. Mac, you can pick the topic.
Okay.
We can talk about Nintendo World Championships, or we can talk about No Man's Sky still trying to stay relevant. And both of them would be good stories, so don't...
Let's go for No Man's Sky.
All right, guys, we'll end the news on this news story on Game Informer. It says, and of course it's reloading on my phone. I don't know what's up with my internet, man. I had all these stories preloaded, ready to go. Let's read a couple comments real quick. Do you want to read a couple of these comments about esports and things like that while I'm waiting for this to load? Go for it, man.
Sure. From Galvatron, it's not going to happen in 2024. The IOC is very slow when it comes to adding or deleting sporting events. And from our good buddy Houseless Gamer, esports, it's just not that popular in the West. It's picked up some, but I don't know if it'll get there now. Maybe later. And, of course, an insightful comment from Maction. Yeah, not quite yet.
You guys are absolutely wrong about that. And I don't want to get too off topic, but are you serious? You don't think it's popular in the West? Call of Duty? Dota? League of Legends? I get League of Legends is more in Korea. But all of those games are very relevant here in the West. Overwatch? I mean,
I think the point is it's not as popular in the West as it is overseas.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. I'll agree with you there. Well, hey, here's this news story. It says, Hello Games' Sean Murray has had a tough year, mostly criticized for his silence in the wake of No Man's Sky's critical reception. In recent weeks, however, No Man's Sky fans noticed that an alternate reality game seemed to be taking place surrounding the title. The ARG has culminated in a message that Sean Murray himself, to talk about the anniversary update for No Man's Sky. The No Man's Sky subreddit has the memo and reposted it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But there was one part I wanted to hit on because it frustrated me. Let's see, where's it at? He says, Update 1.3 will release this week and will be available for free for all No Man's Sky players. We're calling it Atlas Rises. It focuses on improving the central story of No Man's Sky and adds the ability to quick travel between locations using portals. Patch notes will be made available shortly before the update goes live. What we do is much more important than what we say. But since launch, we have sometimes focused too much on that. So this frustrates me because No Man's Sky was such a mess when it came out. And it was one of those games where I knew I wasn't going to drop $60 on it until I saw the reviews just because of the mess that it went through in development. And I just felt like it was too ambitious. So at this point, to go back and to say, hey, we're going to make the story better. Oh, and by the way, we're going to give you the ability to fast travel. First of all, you're dang right that better be a free update. You better not charge people a cent for that after you lied and you took people's money. I'm just being honest. And second of all, I'll be honest, man, it's just too late. I think it's just too late for them to be doing this. The game is discounted everywhere, and in my mind, it's still more expensive than it should be. I will not jump on the No Man's Sky bandwagon until I have a lot of free time and it costs $9.99 or less. Like maybe actually probably $4.99. There's no way I'm buying this game. There was someone who posted a comment on this story and said that the average number of players was 717 on Steam for the past month or something like that. I don't know if that's accurate, but to me, that's just an example of how far the game has dwindled. Mac, I don't know if you have a comment on this or not. I don't know if you followed No Man's Sky like I have, so no pressure. But that's kind of the news that we had for this week. Would love to see your feelings in the chat. And Mac, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, now we'll move on. We've taken a look at the gaming's present and perhaps a bit of its future. Now we'll take a look at some of gaming's past, specifically some of the things that have happened this week in years past that maybe have shaped gaming or maybe have just shaped our history and feelings about gaming. And I want to start with the first one from 1991, released for the Super Nintendo, Mario Paint. And most importantly, though, the Super Mouse accessory.
Yes, indeed.
Now, now Mario Paint means basically nothing to me, but seeing as how it brought us the Super Mouse, which was very, very useful for some games like, for example, Eye of the Beholder, Civilization, Sid Meier's Civilization could be played with the mouse. There's a list of, I think, something like 40 or so games for the Super Nintendo that you could use the Super Nintendo mouse for.
I didn't know this. You're dropping knowledge right now.
Yeah, well, hey, that's what this section's all about. That's what this whole show's about, Mr. Nice Guy,
That's
dropping
right.
knowledge. And so now, strangely enough, the Super Nintendo mouse did not actually work, at least as far as I'm aware, with SimCity for the Super Nintendo, which was also released this past week in the same year, 1991, which would, of course, potentially make some amount of sense. Although when you think about it, SimCity, as well as Civilization and several others, are kind of the perfect games to have a mouse peripheral attachment for. I won't lie, I've been debating about buying a Super Nintendo mouse so that I could play Mario Paint and maybe a couple of other games a bit more effectively on my Super Nintendo, but still a touch on the fence about it. But there is no doubt that it was really, really nice to have that peripheral for these games that took advantage of it. And I won't say that it opened up a whole bunch of more genres onto the Super Nintendo, but from experience, I've played games like Eye of the Beholder and Civilization on the consoles before, on like the NES, and there's going to be a huge world of difference in the frustration level and the enjoyability of those games as compared to being able to play it with a mouse. So I think it probably, if anything, helped those genres a lot on the Super Nintendo. So let me move on to the next one, which is probably even more momentous because it's been a fantastic week. But this one's amazing. All right. Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, boy.
The first one was released on arcade in 1992, this past week. Now, there is no doubt that Mortal Kombat has a very interesting past. Of course, there are those things like Mortal Kombat featured heavily. I mean, before Grand Theft Auto was the focus of everybody's violent video games hysteria, it was without question Mortal Kombat was the focus of everyone's hysteria before that. And let's not forget the Mortal Kombat Night Trap violent video games hearings in front of Congress. You know, Mortal Kombat and Night Trap both featured heavily in those with all the fatalities.
Fatality. Finish him.
So yeah, Mortal Kombat, love it or loathe it. I actually quite like it. I know I've mentioned before that when I was my first year at university, I actually I worked at an arcade. There were only two of us, so I pretty much ran the place, which was nice. But anyway, there was a Mortal Kombat arcade machine there, and I put in some time on it, and yeah, I enjoyed Mortal Kombat. 1992 released in arcade, but this is the last one that I want to mention. The franchise, an amazing franchise, got started in 1996 on the PlayStation. Worms. Perhaps you've heard of it.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it once or twice.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. It's an amazing franchise.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we have 5 Worms games at the current moment in the series.
It's a lot of them.
I think it's 5 because I know the one that I have the fondest feelings for is definitely Worms Armageddon. That's what I would play in the computer lab when I was done with my work, but didn't want to fiddle around with, other stuff. It was like, I got done with my, with my computer certification work in 5 minutes. I've got an hour and a half. Let's play Worms Armageddon. And we'd play it with some friends there there as a LAN game. So anyway, Worms all started back in 1996 with its release on the PlayStation. So there we go. There's a little bit of gaming history this past week. So yeah, Mr. Nice Guy, over to you, sir.
Yeah, real quick, I got fond memories of Mario Paint, man.
Oh, yeah, you've got fond memories.
It was so
please.
unique. The only game that I really remember playing on there, the only mode was there was one where you could like slap these flies. I don't know if anyone else played that mode, but you just basically used your clicker like your mouse like a fly swatter, and you'd slap all these flies, and then bigger like radioactive flies would come, and you'd have to get them all before they stung you through the screen. And it was just a cool, unique type of game. It was very, very cool. So that's my memory of one of the games from this week. And now, guys, it's time for our next segment, known to many, known to all as the viewer question of the week, a segment of the show where you ask us a question and we answer it. Sometimes seriously, sometimes sarcastically, but always in an entertaining way. This week's question comes from Galvatron. He wants to know, he says, PS Plus price is going up in Europe, US likely to follow. Will charging for online for consoles reach a saturation/customer rebellion point? This is a really, really good question. Mac, do you want me to field this first, or do you want to hop in on this one?
Well, I just got done talking, so why don't you go for it?
Sounds good, man. So, I don't know what you mean by saturation point, because basically, Galvatron, we've reached the point where every console is now charging for online. And I mean, like a home console. The handhelds are not. But I mean, Nintendo has announced that they are going to. Sony has already been doing it, and Xbox has already been doing it. And actually, PS Plus already went up in the U.S. not long ago. So you said something about it going up in the U.S. It already has. I believe it used to be $50. Now it's $60 a year, unless you buy it on sale somewhere. So I don't think it's going to reach a saturation point. But what I will say is this. I think that because everyone is doing it now, it has lowered the quality, it's lowered the caliber of the online offerings. This month for PlayStation Plus was absolutely phenomenal as far as the games that they're giving out. They're giving out Just Cause 3. They're giving out Downwell. They gave out a bunch of good games last month. Like, it's really, really taken off and hit its stride. It's not just indies. They're giving out AAA titles now. So in that regard, I feel like PlayStation has stepped their game up. But at the same time, I look at Nintendo. And I was reading something on Reddit earlier this week about Splatoon 2, the first-person shooter that just came out for the Nintendo Switch. And people were complaining and saying that the online for it is absolutely unacceptable. And part of the reason that they felt that it was so bad, is because they know that in a few months you won't be able to play online anymore without paying for that online Nintendo subscription. So why is Nintendo able to get away with doing this? Because everyone else is charging for their online too, right? If it was only Nintendo doing it, no one would do it. People would rebel. But because every gaming company is charging for online, now gamers can't rebel. If you want online, you have to do it. You can't say, hey, Sony's charging for it, Xbox doesn't. Now we're going to go to Xbox because we want the free online. And it used to be that way. And Mac, I'll wrap up in just a second. It used to be that way. It used to be that Xbox was the only one charging for Xbox Live and that Sony had free online. Now they don't. So I don't think there's going to be a rebellion. I think there's going to be complaints, but everyone will keep paying for it. Mac, do you have any stance on this?
Sadly, being somebody who doesn't do that much current gen consoles, I think I'm ill-equipped to answer the question. However, in general, it could be like you say that it could be that it decreases the inclination to put out a good product, or maybe even increases it because people won't want to pay for it. But then again, if the only option is to pay for it, or to go buy another console, pay for that console's online play and marketplace and such, and go from there, it doesn't seem like much of an option. It seems like the walls are getting a little bit higher as far as console, cross console movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which I probably didn't come anywhere near a reasonable thought throughout that whole
you
rambling
did. The
process.
reason I'm smiling is because I'm multitasking here. I'm listening to your awesome statement and reading this awesome argument, or I should say debate, between two of our viewers about Hello Games and about the crap that they put out with No Man's Sky. So that's the thing I love about this podcast. We got such intelligent viewers here debating awesome topics while we're also talking about awesome stuff. It's like a dream come true. Well, Mac, did you have other thoughts, or was that kind of what you thought?
No, that's kind of it. Like I said, I'm ill-equipped to answer that question. Well,
no, that's totally cool. And guys, that has been our viewer question of the week. You can submit those to us on Twitter at TwoNerdsInAPod or at our Gmail, TwoNerdsInAPodcast@gmail.com before the show. Mac, over to you, buddy.
All right, so now we're on to the next little segment, which is Kick or Kickstart. A little bit of chat involvement, so those of you who are here for the live show, go ahead and be ready to type into the chat whether you think that this game I'm about to present should be kick-started, it meets your seal of approval, we should go for it, or it should be kicked, as in we kick it out of here, kick it to the curb, get rid of it because we don't need it. We're not going to take it anymore.
We're not gonna take it.
No, we ain't gonna take it. I do like some Twisted Sister. So here we go. I've gone ahead and put a link to it in the chat for those here live. It's called Phoenix Springs. So it's a bit of a mystery adventure game. Now, the first thing that immediately jumps out to me that I like about this game is that it is a point-and-click style game. And I really like point-and-click mechanics. Now, they do specifically cite that they combine point-and-click mechanics from games that we know and love, like Full Throttle. And, I've got that Full Throttle perler on my wall, so that's definitely a good thing to say to me if you're targeting Mac here. Also, bringing in multiple choices. So the implication there, they cite specifically Wolf Among Us and Life is Strange. Implication there being that you can have a great deal of impact on the game, even though they're still a little bit tongue-in-cheek about how much impact you'll have on the game. When they cite things like Wolf Among Us and Life is Strange, I mean, well, I'll just leave that there. But, and here's what I think's interesting. They're not really going to do object-oriented puzzles in this, but mainly concepts and things like that. Now, they cite Resonance by Wadjet Eye Games. That's a game that I have played, and they had in it this fun little short-term and long-term memory, so that you could drag an object into your long-term or short-term memory, and you could use that as a talking point, which was really, really cool, and a cool way to round out the point and click mechanic without getting bogged down in like dialogue trees, because you didn't have to go through tons of dialogue trees to try and figure out, oh, am I asking the right questions? Are I going to get the right answers? So definitely a cool thing that Resonance did, and that I'm excited that they're going to bring it in. Now, the main focus of the game is supposed to be discovery, because this whole thing is basically this huge mystery. It has a little bit of a hint of the Lovecraftian horror to it, just the psychological horror in the background that I actually find definitely appealing, and I'll talk some more about that later when we're talking about the games that we've been playing, because I've been playing one like that. But anyway, Phoenix Springs, they're going for $10,500 to make the game. They're about halfway already. I think it looks pretty good. I don't know. I mean, the animation style is fine, even though it looks a little rudimentary. We'll see if it improves much. Because even if it just stays like this, it has this sort of 1970s photograph feel to it. The sort of colorization of the whole situation seems a lot more like that sort of false color that you would have by people, adding stuff in the 70s or whatever the terrible Kodak photos were. You know the types I'm talking about, right, Mr. Nice Guy?
I sure do.
Those old ones. But the music seems pretty good. Point and clicks, I'm always a big fan of point and clicks. And yeah, so there we go. Phoenix Springs. Now, as we know, I do have a rule. It's an important rule. And for those of you who've been here a long time, you've probably never heard it before, but it's all about a playable demo. And sadly, Phoenix Springs does not have a playable demo. So I do like the look of it, but and I do kind of like they cite a lot of games as inspiration that are among my favorites. But without a playable demo, I've got to go Kick.
All right, and I've got now. Oh, Mac, this is the point where people vote, right? Or do I need to stay my opinion?
Yes, indeed. No. Guys, go ahead, start putting in your votes into the chat. Kick it or kickstart it. And Mr. Nice Guy, tell us your take on it.
And if you guys want to tell us why you think it should be kicked or kickstarted, that's awesome too. I think it should be kicked as well, simply because I don't like the art style, man. Now, okay. I respect the fact that they're only asking for $10,000. And just to put things in perspective, yes, that's a lot of money. But, I mean, we see Kickstarters all the time that are asking for way more than that. They're asking for six figures. To me, if a company really believes that they can complete their game with $10,000, it means that they have really put in the groundwork to do most of the funding and the production before asking the public and asking their following for money. So I can respect that, and I want to give them credit for that where credit is due. I just don't like the look of the game. It looks to me like a GameCube game. It actually something about it reminds me of this old game called Killer 7 that was done with cell shading. And I liked the game at the time, but I mean, that was probably over 10 or 15 years ago. So to me, the graphics are too old looking and not polished enough. You can do the style that they're trying to do and make it look a little bit smoother. And so for that reason, I just don't think it's a game I'd want to look at for hours to play. So I'm going to say kick it. And I think that people are kind of agreeing with you, Mac, in the chat.
Yeah, yep. We've got kicks down the row. I will throw this out here. It isn't related, strictly speaking, to kick or kickstart, but it is, I think, worth noting. If you weren't already aware, there happens to be a little HDMI plug-in for your GameCube. It's about $100, but you plug it in. No mods necessary. You just plug it into the back of the GameCube and then run the HDMI cable up to your television. Just throwing that out there because I found out about it earlier today.
That is kind of cool. If you'd have to be a GameCube enthusiast.
Yeah, or the only other way to get you've got composite cables for a GameCube just in general. But to get component cables, the 3 that carry video and then, the 2 that carry sound, those are ridiculously expensive. They're in the $200, $300 range to get those cables because they're so freaking rare.
For a GameCube?
Yeah, for a GameCube, for those connections. But, we'll... Now, I just figured I'd throw that out there.
I like that, and I hate to be contradictory, but I'll say this. The alternative... is that the Wii played GameCube games, and it came with a component cable, and it had a hookup on the side for GameCube controllers with no extra hardware necessary. So that's an option too. Unless you just really want to play on your GameCube or you just can't find a Wii, that's an option too. But we digress.
Yes, we digress. So my apologies. Thank you so much, everyone, for putting in your votes. It looks like this one is getting kicked. But we gave it its moment in the sun. And Mr. Nice Guy, over to you, sir.
Now it's time for my favorite segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's time for the main event. It's time for the Dummy of the Week. A segment of the show where we talk about someone who did something stupid, idiotic, or downright dumb, and we make fun of them. This week we have a short one, you guys. This comes from Fullerton, California, on abc7.com. It says, Fullerton police officers served search warrants at 2 businesses suspected of posing as video game arcades. With the help of the Department of Justice, officers walked people out of the video game lounge in the 2600 block of West Orange Thorpe. An investigation began after police received complaints from neighbors about late hours, gang members intimidating customers, and a long list of illegal activities. So I'm just going to say, if you are a business and you're trying to pose as a certain type of business so you can do other illegal activities, you should make your business someplace where gang members would actually be. Because anytime I'm at an arcade and I see a gang member walk in, I think, oh, this is not really an arcade. This is something else, because gang members don't really game that much. That's just been my experience. I don't think that people go commit a murder and then want to play some Pac-Man. Like, I just don't think that's really how it's going down in the streets. Anyway, the rest of the article, it goes on to say, this is a quote, as a result of a lengthy investigation conducted by our Narcotics Vice Unit, we have determined that we believe there has been illegal gambling going on at both of these locations, Sergeant John Radis said. There was also a machine that gambling centered around. Authorities said people gave the owner a minimum amount of money for credits and collected it if they won. One woman who plays at the lounge said she didn't believe it was gambling. Sometimes you're low on some cash or something and you just want to go in and get extra cash or a prize, Mary DeLeon said. I don't even know what she's talking about, but that makes absolutely no sense. Sometimes you're low on cash, so you just want to go into an arcade and get a prize. What is she talking? I don't know what she's talking. I'm not even.
Maybe she, unlike the rest of us, has mastered the crane game.
That's true,
because that's the only easy prize I can think of. I mean, it's not easy. You would have to have mastered the crane game in order to actually get a prize, but still.
So you're saying sometimes people are low on cash and they just want a stuffed animal? That's your argument, Matt? That's what you're trying to say right now?
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough. You never know what's going on in people's minds. You could be right. I also find it hilarious that the gambling centered around one game. And I got to know what game it was. Like, I wish they would have said, like, is it actually a game that gambling would be centered around, that, like, people would be wanting to play? Or was it just, like, an old school, like, House of the Dead? Like, I got to know what game it was, but it doesn't say in here. It says, frustrated business owners said they were relieved to see the police take action and hope it means the location will be shut down for good. Quote, eliminate this infestation of these types of operations across not only Fullerton, but every city that they have tried to pop up in, say Kevin Bell, general manager for Bob Marriott's fly fishing store. He just wants to sell some lures, Mac. He doesn't want people gambling in a fake arcade in his neighborhood. I'm just going to say there's a lot worse fronts that could be happening. Like, I find it hilarious that people are really, really, really mad that people are gambling in an arcade, when ironically in Vegas, where I flew out, the term arcade is used for a place where people gamble. You know what I mean? So I don't get why all these business owners are so mad. I will say this. If you're going to have a front for a business where you're going to be doing something like gambling, don't make the front of a business a place that will attract children. That's just a bad idea. Like, I'm pretty sure it tipped the police off when kids were trying to go into this arcade to play, and the owners were like, wait a minute, are you 18? And they were like, no. Well, okay, well, then you can't come in here and play Super Mario Brothers. You got to be 18 to come in this arcade. Like, that was probably a sure giveaway that there was something shady going down. Guys, that's our Dummy of the Week. Mac, over to you, my friend.
All right. Well, we'll move into the last little segment of our show, which is called Legalese. Now, sometimes this takes the form of say, for example, big court cases, things that are going to shape video gaming, or lawsuits, or patents. But today is definitely a little bit of a patent infringement, because, Mr. Nice Guy, do you remember a certain daytime television character called what was it? Was it Miss Cleo? Call me for your free tarot reading
Miss
now.
Cleo. Of course I remember her. Of
Yes.
course. I tell your fortune.
So do you remember Grand Theft Auto Vice City?
Mac, of course. Of course, man.
Of course you do. Do you remember a character in Grand Theft Auto Vice City that was basically a version of Miss Cleo?
I do. Yeah, I sure do. I don't remember the name, but I remember the character.
Auntie Poulet?
Yes.
Yeah, is that it? So here's the thing that's interesting. The woman who we remember as Miss Cleo from television was a character done by Yorlee Del Harris, I believe is the way to say her name, and she passed away in 2016. As a result, there was an obituary that was put out, because that's what happens when you die. You put out an obituary, let people know that a beloved person has died. Well, inside this obituary, it was mentioned that she essentially reprised her role of Miss Cleo for the video game Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So there is a group, the people who basically own the television personality, who own the character of Miss Cleo, which is PRN is the name of the group. They submitted what amounts to a lawsuit of infringement, because they have essentially made an unauthorized reproduction of copyrighted materials with this auntie character from Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So that's all very interesting, of course. And you would think, well, hey, wait a minute. This was, like Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Wasn't that like 2002? Yeah, you're right. 15 years. Isn't that a little late to be issuing a problem? Yeah, you're right too. And here's where this particular lawsuit, which is going to get thrown out, almost guaranteed, gets fun. Because in the 10-page write-up that they issued to the makers of Grand Theft Auto, they do sort of concede at the outset that yes, it's past the statute of limitations for this kind of a lawsuit where we are, because they filed it in Missouri, I believe, and the statute of limitations there for a copyright thing for infringement like this is 3 years. They said, but we only became aware of this in 2016 when the obituary was put out there, which is really kind of funny. So I don't know which way this is going to go. I'm 99% sure that it'll get just thrown out, but who knows? Maybe there's something about this whole lawsuit that I haven't considered. But yeah, it's past the statute of limitations. But it is funny to hear that somebody, that at the one hand, you would want to sue somebody, right? Because you think they've got deep pockets or whatever for infringing on your copyright, but 15 years too late, and the only reason you found out about it was because of an obituary that in passing mentioned that Miss Cleo appeared in Grand Theft Auto Vice City. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how this goes, but that's just a little taste of legalese. Remember, people, don't file your lawsuits past the statute of limitations. It usually does not go well.
Never goes well.
So there we go. There you have it. There's a little bit of legalese for you, and we'll see what the good litigious society of the U.S. has for us next week.
That's right, and ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. Thank you for tuning into episode number 39 of Two Nerds in a Pod. Now, before we go, we like to do one last segment called What We've Been Watching. I don't know why I paused like that. Called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing. But let me backpedal, because there's two things I forgot to mention that are kind of significant news stories. Just real quick, Lawbreakers came out today. Cliffy B's new game. He's only charging, I believe, like $30 for this game. He's the guy who made Gears of War. and many other games too. So that game came out today. Check that out if it's your type of thing. First-person shooter type game. Additionally, someone mentioned NBA Live 18 in the chat, and I wanted to point out that for the first time ever in a video game, you will be able to play as WNBA players. Which, I mean, the WNBA gets made fun of a lot, but I think this is a serious milestone that they added that into the game. So if that's your thing, check that out. And then now we'll do the last segment of the show called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about what we've been watching and what we've been playing. And we want to get your input too. So you guys, please tell us in the chat the shows that you've been watching, the movies, the Blu-rays, all the cool stuff that you've been watching, the nerd content, even comic books, games you've been playing. Let us know because we're always looking for more cool stuff. Mac, do you want to lead us off today?
Absolutely. So I'll start. What I've been playing is I've been playing this little game called Sundered. Now, you may recall I talked about it previously on a Kick or Kickstart episode. I thought it was amazing. It was wonderful. It did not meet my minimum requirement for having a playable demo, and I did not back it on Kickstarter. But Mrs. the Mac, being the wonderful person that she was, heard about heard my anguish about that. And she actually backed it for me, gave me the key. So I've been playing Sundered. It got its full release this past week. It's quite fantastic. I just beat it for the first time, first full playthrough. Loved it. Lovecraftian, horrifying. It's got hordes and hordes of enemies.
What style? How would you describe the style of game?
Metroidvania is the style, but it's definitely lots and lots of fun. So just throwing it out there. Sundered was good. I enjoyed it. I'll be playing through because there's 3 different endings, so I'll be playing it through a couple more times for sure. As for what I've been watching, Mrs. the Mac and I have been watching Voltron. Season 3 just barely came out, which is exciting stuff. I'm also going back through Daredevil Season 2 in preparation for The Defenders, which comes out on the 18th. And I had prematurely said in last episode of Two Nerds in a Pod that I was super excited because The Tick on Amazon was coming out that day. Sadly, I got my months mixed up, and it's the end of this month.
Yeah, yep.
So I figured I ought to just issue that quick retraction. Cool. But apart from that, that's kind of what I've been watching and what I've been playing. What about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
Dude, I was on vacation, so I got a lot of watching and a lot of playing in. Yeah, guys, keep the stuff in the chat coming, what you've been watching and what you've been playing. We really want to know. So I have been watching, I got back into Blacklist. I'm on Season 2. I am also on Season 2 of Daredevil. And I just finished Episode 4, which is where something significant happens. I don't want to spoil it in case anyone has not seen it. But yeah, I literally was watching Daredevil last week. Went and saw Spider-Man at the new Factoria Theater in Seattle. They have a beautiful facility. Check that out if you're in the Seattle area. Mac, have you seen the newest Spider-Man movie or not yet?
I have not yet.
Okay.
But I did watch Dark Tower over the weekend.
Dude, how was that? How did you not just mention that?
I'm sorry. It just when you were like movies. But Dark Tower, Idris Elba is fantastic. So I was familiar with the story of the Dark Tower. Just in general, I had heard bits and pieces of it. They went surprisingly. So Stephen King, as you know, like he hated the Stanley Kubrick The Shining because it wasn't true to the source material. And then Stephen King had another one done, another version of The Shining done that was more true to the source material. And, and that's the one that he put out there. So I'm really surprised as this is less of a less of a story that uses the first book for inspiration, as it kind of gives bits and pieces and events and things from all the books. And I'm honestly surprised that Stephen King let that fly. But for my part, having not read the books, having just known about some of the events and the things that happen in the Dark Tower series, I loved it. I thought the pacing was all right because I knew it was coming from its source material was 8 books long.
Wow. And
Stephen King has diarrhea of the fingers. That man can write.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I understood that it was going to suffer from pacing issues from the beginning. Now, it's been kind of critically panned. I think it's at like 16% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. And I wonder if basically they took like the only critics who went to see it were the critics who had a love affair with the books. Because it does not deserve a 16%.
That's what I was going to ask
critic.
you is if having a knowledge of the books made you more critical of the movie. But it sounds like it did not.
Yeah, I think having a surface knowledge of the books made me more appreciative of the movie itself, being like, oh, I understand what they're trying to do here. I understand how it was rough. Of course, I have a big crush on Idris Elba, so maybe that blinded me because he's just badass in this one. I'm just really it was cool.
I'm telling your wife.
Oh, she already knows. She was there with me, Mr. Nice Guy.
Fantastic. Well, what else have I been watching? I think that's what I've been watching. As far as what I've been playing, I just got a little bit of Lucio Ball in on Overwatch. It's decent. I don't think I'm going to play it too much more. I've been playing the new PS Plus title Downwell, and it's interesting. I like games that are that style, where you're scrolling. This one's unique in that you're falling down a well and you're shooting characters as you go down. Usually it's every other direction, either to the right or going up when you're playing these side-scrolling games, or I should say scrolling games. This one you're going down, and at first it was too easy, but the difficulty level picks up very quickly. Free title if you have PlayStation Plus. There's no reason not to go download it. It's fantastic. Still playing Little Samson. Always playing Miss Pac-Man. Played a lot of Mario Kart 8 this past week, just in the airport. And I think that's it. Oh, I want to give a shout out to the Carmichael Show, too. I've been watching that on Netflix. It's African-American comedy, y'all. If you're into that type of thing, you'll love it. If you're not, it's not for you. But I really like the show. Check it out. And I think we'll end it there. Now, we have a lot of people here in the chat today, which is a great thing. Yes, I have downloaded Just Cause 3, Bob. Thank you for checking. Mac, so you got a little bit of work ahead of you as far as reading the awesomeness.
Indeed. So I'll get cracking. We'll start with some games. Star Ocean 2. Going through the childhood backlog and watching X-Files. That's from House, from Galvatron. We've got some Voltron, Season 3, Ghost in the Shell, and Okja. Yeah, we'll go with that. Some Star Trek Enterprise, Guild Wars 2 game, and let's see, playing some Bulletstorm, Horizon Zero Dawn, Titanfall 2, another L-Runs, watching some Voltron Season 3, playing Legend of Grimrock, and Bravely Default. I hear good things about.
He's playing the Disney Afternoon Collection, too.
Oh, sorry, Disney Afternoon Collection. Yes, indeed. So that's DuckTales 1 and 2,
Tailspin.
Rescue Rangers, and Tailspin, and I don't remember and Darkwing Duck. There we go.
That's right.
And then we've had some talk about the new Spider-Man. Some think it's great. Some think that it's overrated. So yeah, there we go.
It's kind of the definition of a movie right there.
Mm.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for tuning in. All the old episodes for this are on iTunes. Look us up, Two Nerds in a Pod. If you really like the show, please hit that follow button and go subscribe. That didn't even make sense. Hit the follow button here and go subscribe on iTunes to listen to all the old stuff. We do this every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You guys keep it nerdy, and we'll see you next week. Deuces.